Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education and the assistant chair of the music education department at Berkeley College of Music. And I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is John Bramblitt. John Bramblitt is an American painter and is also blind. He was the first blind muralist in the world, with murals in both New York and Dallas, known for his bright colors and a style that mixes Impressionism with the modern feel of pop art. John is also the author of the award-winning book, Shouting in the Dark. He has appeared on CBS Evening News with Katie Couric, ABC, NBC, Fox, Discovery Channel, and BBC Radio and TV, to name just a few outlets. And he has been featured in the New York Times and Psychology Today. He also designed the artwork for numerous magazine covers and even the artwork for major film productions. John is the subject of the award-winning documentary shorts Line of Sight and Bramblitt. His art has gone to over 120 countries around the world, and he is known for his interactive speaking events, lectures, and free art workshops where everyone paints together, no matter their ability or disability.
Welcome, everybody. I'm John Bramblitt, and I am so excited today because today I have the pleasure of introducing Bruce Horak. He's a true Renaissance man. He's a Canadian artist, actor, playwright, musician, and let's not forget, the first legally blind actor to boldly go where no one has gone before in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, despite losing 90% of his vision at a young age. But that is just one facet, one role in a career where Bruce has just constantly challenged what it means to be a visual artist and a performer. I want to thank you so much, Bruce, for being here, for taking time out of your busy, busy schedule.
It is absolutely my pleasure, John. It's so nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the invite. Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. My wife and I have been fans of yours for a long time and fans of your art. And I wanted to ask you about your Portraits of Perception series. My wife has described them to me. It just sounds so interesting. I was wondering if you would be able to describe, briefly what that series is. And what I was wondering more specifically really was, whenever you approach a subject, do you have a particular emotional or a theme in mind, or do you just let the process evolve organically?
Great question. Well, to briefly outline the project, it is a series of portraits, and a friend of mine saw me on stage one day, acting and doing up a performance of some sort, and then afterwards saw me with my white cane, and there was this sort of disconnect for him. He's like, "Wow, you're visually impaired, and yet you're doing this. Like, how do you do that?" And the question came up of like, "How do you see?" I was like, well, it's really hard to describe to somebody how you see. I mean, everyone's perception of the world is just so different and unique. And I thought, well, I have a little bit of experience with drawing and painting. And so I decided, well, maybe I could try to capture how I see in acrylic paint. And I sat with my friend and we got chatting. And gosh, about 3 hours went by. And it was just the best conversation. It started with kind of how we see and got into discussions of like not only vision but eyesight and the differences between that. And at the end of it I had this kind of distorted rough portrait of the sitting, and I was really quite taken by that. And I could look at it and feel the textures of it, and I would remember every bit of that conversation, and it was just like very tactile artistic representation of a conversation with an old friend of mine. And over the course of a week, I sat with a bunch of more people, and it just kind of evolved into this project of, actual FaceTime with people. And I got to about, I think, 25 portraits, and I thought, well, I got to keep going at this. And I sat with an actual artist, a painter in Victoria, James Gordonier, who was, I think, almost 80 at the time. And we got talking about painting, and he's like, yeah, it's a lifelong pursuit. And he said, you have to keep going. He's like, I don't know what you have, but I think you're on the right path. So I kept going, and I set myself a goal of doing 1,000 portraits.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
That's incredible.
well, honestly, it's so funny, John. I misheard. There was some famous quote about, well, if you want to master something, you have to practice it for 1,000 hours, is what I thought it was. It's actually 10,000 hours. But I figured, well, if I did 1,000 portraits, I would master this thing. Well, I'm nowhere near that, nor do I feel anywhere closer to mastery of it. I feel comfortable and confident in it, but I don't think I'm anywhere near mastering it. And in terms of sitting down and, have I got an outcome in mind, or have I got an inspiration in mind? I really take it from the conversation. I really try to sit with the person that I'm painting and just pick up on the vibe of it. That influences the color, that influences, the type of brushstroke that I use. It's a responsive experience for me. I've done a number of them from photographs, in which case I will use assistive technology to zoom in
Mhm.
on the object, and I'll often will project it onto a canvas, and then I can get the inch and a half away from the canvas that I need to be in order to see it, and do the lines and work on it that way. And it's still responsive from the photograph, but I don't necessarily have the vibe of a conversation, someone's tone of voice, the images they use. Are they a person who speaks in short declarative sentences, or are they long-winded like I'm being now? All
Wow,
that to
you
answer your question. There you go.
oh my goodness. No, that is brilliant. Thank you. And having the paintings described to me, I got the sense that it was a personal experience between
Mm,
each individual person. And and I wonder though, being a person who's a visual artist, a visually impaired visual artist, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but
yes.
like every time that you mention like doing art to someone, doing visual arts, it's always a discussion. You always have to explain, it seems like, what
Hmm.
it is. And I was wondering, do you use painting as a way to communicate your experience, of the world to a sighted audience, or is
Oh,
it more of a personal exploration for you?
it started as a personal exploration. I think when I was a kid, like, I would really get lost in the color and the texture and the flow of it. But I really do delight in, and I think this is really what drew me to live performance and being on stages. I love the interaction with an audience. I love to hear them respond to it. I certainly took on the role of class clown because I love to hear the sound of my colleagues and peers laughing. Maybe distracting from their education, but no, there is, yeah, it's a dialogue, and it starts with the sort of internal impulse, but yeah, I'm very much inspired by the audience and how they respond to it, and it's certainly, speaking to this as purely as a creative, it's like, if I don't have someone to be accountable to, I will often find a reason to watch Netflix.
That's
So having people waiting for the work is like, yeah, this is good. I need a deadline. Um,
that's wonderful. Bruce, one of the things that it just blows me away about you is that you have so many different talents. And well, for example, in Assassinating Thompson,
yes.
you blend art, you blend performance, and you investigate an historical mystery all during this. And I was just wondering, like, I have no idea, but how do you even prepare to tell such a complex, multi-layered story? I mean, how do you and do it on stage? That's just I wouldn't even know
Ah.
where to begin.
It's funny, it kind of that show really evolved from, a number of avenues. One is just sitting around and telling a story. I got interested in the story of Tom Thompson, like, when I was in the high school art class. I remember my art teacher telling me about this Canadian painter who, was only had been painting for like 5 or 6 years. He was in his late 30s, and he disappeared across
Mhm.
this lake and kind of left this legacy. So that story intrigued me, and I researched it, and I just love to tell the various avenues of it. And oftentimes when I was sitting with someone and painting their portrait, they would ask me, well, what inspired you to become an artist? And I would tell some of the stories of my own life as a visually impaired person, and encountering artists, and, just talking while I'm painting. And it's interesting. I mean, it's very difficult to do because they're both kind of left brain experiences or right brain
Hmm.
experiences, I should say. And so you're kind of flitting back and forth between all the facets of your consciousness while you're doing it. But I found it like my hand would just start to move automatically while it was telling the story, and the things that would come out would surprise me because I was not necessarily giving it 100% of my focus. In terms of how the show developed, it really came together because I was sitting and painting someone's portrait, and they asked me, tell me your story. And initially, it was 2 hours of portrait painting, and then I got into a rehearsal hall with my director Ryan Gladstone, and we kind of honed down what I would talk about and where the different pieces of the puzzle would fit. Like I mentioned, it's difficult to paint and talk at the same time. So one of the tricks that I came up with was to put my bullet points about what I wanted to talk about. I'd write them really big on my drop cloth. So while I'm moving around the stage on this drop cloth, I could look down and see, oh, here's the next bit of the story that I need to tell, or here's a piece that
Oh,
I've
that's
missed
smart.
out. Um, and yeah, using all of the, my surroundings to the best of my ability. Yeah, and then just to be responsive to the audience and how they're shifting, how they're shuffling, how they're, laughing or not, keeping engaged and hopefully, and yeah, just letting the canvas emerge. It's really one of my favorite shows to do, Assassinating Thompson. Yeah, I kind of get to do everything all at once, all of my favorite things.
Wow, that is just incredible. And I apologize. I know I'm bouncing all around. It's just, and I
That's
blame
okay.
you because you've done so many different things and so much. But I have to admit, my wife and I were huge Star Trek fans. Our wedding reception was a Star Trek reception. So we had
No way.
Klingons and
Awesome.
Ferengi what
No
running
way.
around. Scared
Great.
my mom half to death, especially the
Sure.
Klingon ladies. But you played Hemmer in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, and
Mhm.
just love Hemmer for so many different reasons. But
Mm.
I just I'm wondering if, like, your personal experience of having a visual impairment, did that add to the role for you? Did it influence your performance?
So when I was auditioning for the part, when they put the casting call out, they were looking specifically for a blind or visually impaired actor to play the role. And the other stipulation was that this performer had to be Canadian. So you can imagine
Mm,
the pool of options was quite low. I had very, very little experience in front of a camera. My whatever 25 years as an actor was all done on stage. So my name got put forward to the casting agent, and I read the role of Hammer and understood that he was an Enar, which is a species that's first encountered in Star Trek Enterprise. And they're in a couple of episodes. They're basically blind Andorians with heightened telepathy. So they sort of move through the world with their telepathic abilities. And I got the first scene, which was the introduction of Hemmer, where he meets Uhura for the first time, and he's supposed to be cutting up carrots, I think. And yeah, I got super excited because, like a lot of people, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, was raised on it, and just absolutely loved it, and thought this is incredible that I have this opportunity to do it. I met with the casting director. We rehearsed it a couple of times, put the thing on tape. It got sent, and I did, I think, two or three more auditions and a callback eventually with the showrunner, Henry Alonso Myers, who explained that Hammer was this visually impaired alien, but obviously has kind of heightened powers, and that I don't know if I don't want to spoil the season, but gave me the outline of what was going to happen in the narrative of this first season in the arc with Hammer and Uhura. And yeah, I sat with it for a good long time. I think a couple of months before we went to camera. So I went back and rewatched the episodes with the Enar, who are all played by sighted actors. And I kind of dug around a little bit in terms of like, how do you play? Because I have 9% vision roughly. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what the percentage is, but I'm very, very limited. My right eye is artificial. My left eye, I have extreme tunnel vision. So most of my left eye is scar tissue as a result of radiation from cancer that I had as a baby. So it was tumors on my left retina, retinoblastoma it's called, and they irradiated them, and they figured what would happen would be scar tissue would cover the whole eye. I might have some light perception, but that would be about it. And ultimately, what happened was a very small window on my retina is left unscarred. And then I had a cataract, so the lens clouded over, and I had cataract surgery when I was about 4.5 years old. So my visual field is very narrow. On top of that, my acuity is quite low as well. However, I learned to fake it. I learned to fake being a sighted kid. I went to an integrated school, and I just figured out a whole bunch of tricks to look like all the other kids as best I could. So my lived experience has been one of, and I don't, told this when I was a teenager, and I attended the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. They had a summer workshop called work orientation workshops, and we learned all sorts of independence skills, orientation and mobility, and getting to work. And one of the phrases I heard a lot that summer was, "This is a sighted world. You need to figure out how to adapt." And we're here to help you
Mm,
do that. With the technology, we'll get you,
mhm.
like, at least if you're not swimming at the front of the pack, you're going to at least be in the pool. Let's get you there. And yeah, so my life has been really about finding ways to adapt and fit in, and not necessarily hide it, but mask it as best I could. And this was a role that was asking me to kind of walk into it and really just, okay, how, like, embody this, and see the world through the eye that you have. And yeah, it was quite an extraordinary thing. I normally wear very heavy bifocal glasses, which I couldn't wear under the prosthetics, and I couldn't wear a contact lens. So on the days of shooting, I was going without even a contact lens in my eye. So I was really, like, operating
Man,
sufficiently, significantly impaired. That being said, um, the crew on that set were amazing. They were so accommodating, and they were there to offer help and ask what I needed, and just be responsive. Because again, like, this is such an unknown territory for me, which made me, like, my anxiety level, like, really, really heightened. And they were there right from the moment that I got out of the car to when I got back in the car at the end of the day.
that's
It
incredible.
it really was, John. And it's not something that I was expecting, but it was, yeah, it took all the pressure off of me having to figure out how to adapt to this new world. Took that pressure off, and I could just do my job. I could just be the actor. I could, you know, just be the character and not have to worry about, all the adaptations that I'm going to have to make in order to just compete here. It's like, no, it was done for me. And I could just be the performer. It was, yeah, it's an
My goodness.
extraordinary experience.
Well, you're a very humble person, I have to say, because oh my goodness, Himmer is. I was so thankful for that character, and so many people are. I work with children with visual impairments quite a bit, and that character means a lot to so many people. That sighted and not sighted.
Mhm.
But one of the things too that if you look back in history of people portraying visually impaired people in TV and movies, a lot of
Yeah.
times they're walking around like they're Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But to have
Yeah.
this character that is so capable, that is so
Mm.
he's unapologetically capable,
Yeah.
and just working with everyone. Everybody knows that he's visually impaired, and he's just this very strong character. And the way that you portrayed that came through so clearly.
Thank
It
you.
was wonderful to see. It was just,
Thank you.
I don't know, it was just a beautiful performance, and yeah, it was really special, and I think it touched a lot of people. But also, I
Thank
just
you.
love the character too. It's just a great
Oh,
character. So
it really
just
was. Yeah, it
brilliant.
really was. It really was. Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder, because like you doing this, you're an advocate for disability, and and of course, you being in the spotlight, you being up on a stage, you thrust yourself in the spotlight. And I wonder if you being an advocate for disability, if that informs your artistic choices, of what you paint, of what you do on stage, of creatively, does that
Mm.
guide you in what you choose to do?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been a journey, John. I when I first got into, kind of I graduated from a theater school in Calgary in 1995. And I spent the 2 years in that theater school really just trying to, I had all of my tricks already, and I felt I could just kind of go under the radar with it, with my disability, not have to talk about it. And I really I didn't want to put it anywhere on my resume. I didn't want people to know about this. I would front load all of my work. I would get off book before the first day of rehearsal. I would learn the layout of it so I wouldn't have to wear my glasses. And for a long period of my life, people would have no idea that I was visually impaired. And the reality of it is that it's there with me all the time, and it was kind of this ghost in the closet. And then I started to trying to think now, really when it first started, that was a children's theater company that I worked with, and this was in like 1999. I wrote a show for kids called What You Can't See, and in it, a young boy moves to a new town and he tries to hide his visual impairment, and it gets him into all sorts of trouble. He ends up getting locked in a haunted house with his best friend, and anyway, it was basically like a very thinly masked biography about not being ashamed or shy about your visual impairment, and learning how to talk about it, which can be an obstacle for a lot of people. Certainly, as you're losing your eyesight, it's like, yeah, I get a white cane, and suddenly everyone's going to know, and that's going to make me a target. Or if I wear my glasses all the time, it's going to make me look weaker, or whatever those preconceptions might be. And I
Right,
struggled with
right.
those all through my 20s. Tried to hide it, and really tried not to have it because I was worried I wouldn't get work as a result of it. The number of working artists is so limited, like how much you're actually going to make a year. And then on top of that, oh, now it's an artist with a disability. That famous story about Peter Falk, who played Columbo and was in The
Mhm.
Princess Bride, and he had one eye as well. And there was a producer who said, why would I hire you when I can get an actor with two eyes for the same price? And that sort of,
Yeah.
kind of archetypal response to it. And then I was in my 30s. I moved to Toronto, and an audition came up for a movie called Blindness. And it's based on a really great book about an epidemic, world epidemic, where everyone goes blind. And the casting director was looking for blind actors. And my agent said, yeah, like you'd be great for this, but you don't really look blind. Like, could you look more blind? So I went to the CNIB and I got my first white cane. Well, and I've been a client with the CNIB since I was a kid, and they're like, yeah, you can have the first cane is free, but you have to have mobility training. So they sent someone to my apartment. I'm living on Yonge Street in Toronto, very busy street, and they showed me how to use this white cane. And then we went for a walk up
Mm.
Yonge Street, and I walked with my head up for the first time. I was like, people were parting in front of me like the Red Sea, and suddenly I had space, and I wasn't this pinball in the world, and it was like a breath of clean air, and it just changed everything. I was no longer afraid of this cane. That yes, for sure, there are experiences that I have with it where you know someone makes a rude comment or whatever, but that is so infinitesimal compared to the amount of good it has done in my life. Um, and that experience has influenced everything I've written and created since then, from painting to Assassinating Thompson to a number of other shows where I have played myself or a person
Mhm.
with a visual impairment. And oftentimes, the visual impairment isn't the reason for the character. It's just a part of who
Mhm.
they are. You know what I mean? And that
Right, right.
distinction is really important. I did a TV series called Transplant, and I showed up in the last two or season and a half of that, and I played a heart doctor who's also visually impaired. But at no point
Mm.
do they actually, like, you hear him at one point. I just reach over and I grab my cane and we leave the room, and it's like there's no other mention of that. Like, he works with other people who are analyzing and reading the stuff, but he's got these ears and he can hear people's hearts, and there's just that kind of, again, like, it's a part of the character. It isn't all that they are.
Right,
And I
right.
think that's been my experience with, certainly with the cane, and with my visual impairment. It's like, yeah, it's part of who I am, but it doesn't define me. And I get really excited seeing the work that's coming out where, yeah, people are just embracing that as part of the artist, not the artist as the whole.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I, you know, Thank you so much for your words. I think I can definitely relate trying to hide, the the difference and trying to go through life like that. And then the impact that learning the mobility training and having the cane and
Mm.
having people actually get away from your path so you can walk. That's I can relate to that so well, and I know that so many people can, and I appreciate you saying that so eloquently. That's just wonderful. And and I have to congratulate you. You received the King Charles III Coronation Medal.
I did.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
goodness!
Yes. Yes, I was awarded a medal for advocacy in disability arts and representation. I went to Quebec City at the end of September and met the Governor General, and yeah, it was a deeply humbling experience.
That
I'm
is
awful grateful
incredible.
for it. Yeah,
That is
yeah, thank
incredible.
you,
That is so
thank you,
wonderful,
thank you.
man. And you deserve it. That is
Thanks, John.
wonderful.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you really quickly, and I don't want to but tell me about Goblin Macbeth. That just sounds incredible. Oh my goodness.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, Goblin Macbeth, which is what I'm currently doing in Toronto right now. They just announced an extension to November 3rd,
Oh wow.
2024. I don't know when podcast is coming out, but I'll give the exact dates. Goblin Macbeth, yes. So the premise of this show is that three goblins have discovered the complete works of William Shakespeare. And Shakespeare seems to know much about their world. He writes about goblins and witches and magic. And so these goblins, not understanding humans entirely, have decided to try theater. And they're going to do their version of Macbeth. And yeah, they do it. Two of the goblins play all the characters back and forth. So myself and Rebecca Northend. I primarily play Mackers, and she primarily plays Lady Macbeth. But we
Wow.
share the Duncan and the Banquo and Macduff and Malcolm and yeah, all the other characters. We switch back and forth, very theatrical. And then our third goblin provides underscore and foley and live instrumentation throughout the show. We like to say it has a fluid fourth wall, so the audience is very much involved in the show. Their reactions are noted and they're encouraged, at points to participate. Light audience participation. And yeah, it's been running now since 2022. We've had several productions of it, two in Calgary, one in Vancouver at Bard on the Beach, and we ran in Stratford, Ontario at the festival there. And we're at the Tarragon Theatre in Toronto right now. We'll be in Edmonton, Alberta in January. And we are currently building a goblin empire. So the goblins are curious about humanity and our culture. So they've also done a production of Goblin Oedipus. They
Wow.
go back into the Greeks, and yeah,
Wow.
they're just we found a company in the States called Composite Effects, CFX. They make these beautiful silicone masks, so we're fully goblined out. They look more like Hollywood grade prosthetics, like they have articulation in the face. You can't really tell where the mask ends, and like our eyes are kind of visible, and we can puppet the mouths really. Yeah, and they're a lot of fun. It marries a lot of my favorite things, which include, Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy, and Shakespeare. Yeah.
That is incredible. I'm a huge fan of Shakespeare, and
Oh,
anything that makes it fun and brings it to, it puts a spotlight on it and it makes people excited about it. That is just
it's yeah, it's been great.
wonderful.
We're doing a lot of student matinees here in Toronto. I think we've got 7 for the high school kids, and I tell you, it's like a rock show. They get right into it. Yeah. Ellis was describing it. He's like, it's like a wrestling match by the end of the show. So they're yeah, it's
Wow.
bridging some borders. If you're goblin curious, this might be the show.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny, man. I'm gonna have to get on a plane and fly up to Canada because
Yes.
that sounds like I do not want to miss that. That sounds incredible. But Bruce, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here and answer all my crazy questions. But thank you so much for
Thank you,
everything that
John.
you've done and everything that you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, and it's been really nice to virtually meet you. I hope to do it in person someday.
I would love that.
Yeah. Come to Canada.
Okay, I will. I'm on my way.
Able Voices is a production of the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education. led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berkeley.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berkeley, that's LEE.edu.